Welcome to the Big Harbor. My favorite place in the city was down on the waterfront. In those days, this is the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, it was in Halifax, it was all open. You could walk right on the wharf. So I was down there one morning, beautiful, beautiful day. And I'm walking along the harbor, and there was a ship anchored in the harbor, what they call anchored in the stream. And there were two tugboats there who had arrived, and the tugboats were angled in such a way that their wheelhouses were facing the ship's wheelhouse. It seemed as if they were having a conversation. So what would they be talking about? So I thought, well, the ships come from somewhere else. Maybe telling stories of things that they've seen in other places. And what would the tugboats do? The tugboats would be telling the ship about the harbor and what they can expect and what's going to happen next. Well, they'll take them, and then what they might do while they're here, and a little bit about their place. And I thought about that, and as I kept walking, turned around, started walking back, and I'll say 50 to 60% of the idea for the series just kind of fell into place. Here's a place called the Big Harbor. It has these two tugboats, probably some others. Because they're tugboats, they stay in the harbor, but other ships come and go, and so they exchange ideas about these other ships, and they get to know these different personalities, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then my son was around 3 at the time. Either that night or shortly thereafter, I started sort of spontaneously making up a story. Theodore and his friend Hank, and they were visiting a ship, and the ship wanted to know this. I don't recall the details of that particular story, but I do remember him saying, well, what happened next? So then, of course, I have to make up what happened next. So then I'd take it further. I'd had this relationship happily. I'd had this relationship with the CBC. So I phoned and arranged an appointment with the head of children's television for CBC in Toronto, and I got on a plane and went up this year. And I said, I have this idea here for a show. Put on her glasses and looked at it. Took forever, and looked at it and went back, and then she looked at it and her said, how did you know I always loved tugboats? So anyhow, I made the argument that we needed to have a development period. She said, okay. She gave me a deal to do the development. Part of the pitch and part of the deal was that Halifax at that time was well suited to do children's production. I just done this children's production together with CBC, and they had a spectacular art department. The art department under Tom Anthony's leadership was just among the top of any in the country. So in essence, I negotiated for Tom and his people to be part of the deal, and they agreed. Tom works by building. He's a great modeler, so he would. So the next thing I know, like a few weeks later, he come up, what about this? He'd done a little diorama of the whole set and city and stuff.
This story didn't begin once upon a time. It began only yesterday in a small town on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. This is where 10-year-old Tracy Allen lives with her younger brother Wayne and their mother and father. Members of Tracy's family have lived here ever since her great-great-grandmother Sarah arrived over 150 years ago. One day, while their father was at sea, something happened to Tracy and Wayne that changed their lives, and as we'll see, could save many others.
The props builder on Blizzard Island was a guy by the name of Fred Allen, and I wanted him part of the deal as well. He was very enthusiastic. He loved working with Tom. We'd had a very good relationship working together on Blizzard Island, so he seemed to be keen to come on board. And he was the perfect person to solve all the issues with the tugboats. And these are not insignificant issues. So one thing was to get a tugboat model that had the right look, the right proportions. But then I wanted them to have a face and different expressions and moving eyes and a ball cap to help sort of easily differentiate between the characters.
It's Emily. Oh, we didn't know it was you because of your new hat, shouted Hank. It's really fuzzy, said Theodore. It's really fresh, added Hank. And fresh was the only word he could think of just then. It's not the same, said Emily in a voice she could hardly hear.
I think he just hired me right away as a story editor. I wrote 110 of the 130 episodes.
Well, I was writing for another Canadian TV show called Under the Umbrella Tree. I was invited to go to a special workshop session at CBC in Toronto for writers from across the country, where we all, honed our skills and met each other and collaborated. And Andrew Cochran was there at the final meet and greet of that session. So I steeled myself and approached him and said, I hear you're doing a show and I'd love to be a part of it. And he said, okay, well, let's give it a try. So that was great. And I enjoyed working with him. Of course, in those days, you didn't just email your work, you mailed it or you faxed it. I loved the idea of the harbor and the boats. And I loved how serious the show was. The little dilemmas that Theodore and his friends face are pretty serious, grown-up kind of things, even though they're translated into childish parameters. But I loved how it was like a little peek into the adult world.
I was really lucky because my dad sort of came to me, Fred, and said, well, I'm going to be designing this show for Theodore Tugboat, and I need somebody to help me work on the pre-production, starting to build some of the models and figure out how we were going to actually do them. So I was pretty lucky. I got to be in the year leading up to shooting the show, and then I worked during the first season. It was just a great learning curve for me. I got to try all kinds of different things because of my dad. I worked mostly on the secondary characters.
But then still we had to get them to work in the water. And we had to figure out how to move them around. And finally he came up with, well, what if we had them mechanized? How are we going to build them mechanized? Well, we've got to find somebody that's good with little motors and stuff. So fortunately he had a contact, Airy, and he came on board. He was able to build these little motors, and then he experimented with the kind of propeller to use. There was enough torque from the motor and the right propulsion from the propeller, and then he fine-tuned the propellers so there'd be a bit of a wake in the water.
If there were any waves in a pool, then they would bob like a cork because they're only small boats. Now they work like a hand cart. They ride on the main wheels on the bottom of the pool. The rear wheel is free, it's cleared, so it's free to swing. It's like a hand cart. And the rear wheel is only there to prevent accidental swamping. So when we come down on it, that she doesn't go on the water.
Then we had to come up with the water. So we felt we were going to build a whole water tank. Well, how deep is the water tank? Well, how much draft can the tugboats take? Well, they're not going to be able to float. They're going to be too bobby in the water. That's going to give away their girth and their power. We had to come up with an underwater carriage system so they would glide on the bottom but still have enough of a bounce that they felt in the water and still be propelled.
There was always two people in the pool with the models, and they had to wear, overalls, like the fishing overalls, and they had to move really slow because you started to get too much of a wave that would knock everything over.
Really, it was Greg and Linda, I think, were the key boat operators, and they had a really good skill at that.
It was challenging, but rewarding in the end. Looking at it, I built the bridge itself.
Why, I'm Benjamin B. Bridge.
I was told that the center section had to be able to come out, which created all kinds of problems for me, because how do I get it to self-support when you take the center out? So it took a long time to build that and whatnot, and to my knowledge it never did come out except for when we were moving the set for the season or whatever.
Are you lost? Said Theodore. We're not, tooted one of the boats, whose name was Philip. Lost, tooted the other, whose name was Fillmore.
I personally built the two ferries. A number of us were all involved in building the set, myself included. Linda came up on her own time. She went into the shop and she cast heads, made the perfect circular cylinder or whatever, and cast it in fiberglass. And then she made various, mouths and eyebrows and whatnot. Dave Woodward is actually my superior in the shop. He would have been the head of the construction and whatnot. Although there was no dialogue when you're in the pool, we were just told, okay, this is where Hank's going to go down and talk to Northumberland or whatever. It's the first season we shot up until Christmas, I believe. We were using, Fred Allen had made the heads, and he was using like round spray 9 bottles and cutting out various things. The trouble with those were they weren't perfectly circular. As the eyes moved, and you were told to always keep the eyes moving. If you look at any of those episodes, the eyes are always constantly moving.
We have a combination of something like 30 or 40 expressions, if we wanted to, on every single character.
Theodore was just Theodore from the beginning. It just came to my mind, and that was that. Hank was the name of one of my son's favorite teddy bears. And Emily was the name that we had picked for my son if he had been a girl. And George was another one of his favorite teddy bears. So initially there were four tugboats. One day we're in Halifax and we're down at the harbor front. At this point we were quite into the stories. So I'd say, well, look, that's Theodore, and that's Hank over there, and that's George, and that's Emily, because they were all based on those real tugboats. But that day there was a fifth tugboat there. And so he said to me, well, who's that one? Well, I don't know. Who do you think it is? And he said, Foduck. I said, okay, it's Foduck. So he named Foduck. And I had to figure out a backstory for Foduck. We have kind of Hank as the pal and the peer at pal, and then we have Emily, and then we have George. I don't want Foduck just to be another one of Emily or George, so that's when we turned him into being the fireboat and the safety officer.
George's lifeboat was filled with flames. Hey, said Hank, it's snowing. Snow, said Emily, in the summer? Sure enough, it seemed like snow was falling from the sky. Then the tug saw that the snow was coming from Foduck. He was spraying special firefighting foam with his fire hose. Yay, shouted Hank. Foduck to the rescue! Soon Foduck's special spray had the fire completely out. Hooray, shouted Theodore.
I had worked with Andrew Cochran on a show called Blizzard Island. And after Blizzard Island, I went off to do some other shows. And then Andrew called me to say he had a new show and would I be interested in coming to work on it. So I said, sure.
I was given a referral to Andrew Cochran. And when I met him and talked to him about the possibility of becoming an apprentice director, so I had this mechanical, kinetic side to me and a little bit of filmmaking. And they kind of came together in the middle with Andrew.
I feel pretty honored that I got pulled in, looking back now on this production, because we had so many people that worked on the production side, like on shows like this outside of news. It was kind of a bigger deal than I think that I thought of at the time. I did the first 3 seasons of Tugboat.
When I went to Halifax, my role became one of a production manager, which involved not just news and current affairs, which our Halifax location was responsible for, but also for any entertainment production. So I was involved with both And when the proposal came to our station for Theodore Tugboat, it was pretty specialized at the time, and it took some very creative people to be able to put it together. And being the production manager, I was responsible for all of our technical personnel and technical resources. So I was tasked with the responsibility of working with the independent producer to put together the necessary pieces that the CBC could offer to make this production work.
I was working at CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, and at that time I was a production switcher. It was a good way to, keep you busy for the summer.
The development process took about 3 years before we started shooting. Doing the stories took some time. It was really the mechanics that took the time, and then of course the other big breakthrough was when Bob came on board. He had identified this special lens. We used a very special lens to shoot the characters called a periscope lens. He was one of only two of its kind in the world. It sort of came down from a big long boom, and it allowed, let's say this is the lens itself, it allowed the lens to get up really, really close to the tugboat, so it gave it that impression of being life-size.
Cut it.
Bob Cardona came over from Tugs right over in England, and they knew that was a big success, and so I'm sure they had their sights on having similar success.
I have two directors on this. One shoots with a very strong storyline. The other, David, who knows the ins and outs of the camera more, is more general in what he tries to do. But at the end of the day, I still try to get some sort of consistency of technique and look. And to a certain degree, also, the characters take over.
A phrase that he used to use after every scene that I still use in my life, which is ever onwards. We would be done, he'd go ever onwards, and I still to this day, and I think of him every time I say it. Like, we had different directors come through at one point. He was our main director, but then Andrew started letting others, like he would give other people a chance to come in and do directing. But it was so different under Bob Cardona. He just had this calm, never got upset. Even when things weren't working, his demeanor was so great.
The show was a little bit ahead of its time in that sense that it was using these, the arm and low angle, which was so important, to give these boats presence on screen. And, today it's the same way. We always shoot like down low, we shoot up, generally speaking, to make sure that the subject is filling the frame, and that was really a critical part of the shooting process, which I presume was part of Bob's contribution as well.
We're shooting everything down as though they're down there with little toys and they're down at that level, but it's also what I call proper camera level.
That's good there.
The custom-built lens has feather-sensitive controls, allowing focus from infinity down to 1 inch.
Oh, hello. I was just wondering, when people put gas or oil in their boats or cars, so they can move around, do they ever stop to think about where the gas or the oil comes from? Huh? You know that some of it comes from way down under the ocean? Yeah. Here, I'll show you. Come with me. See, if you were to go straight out here, right out the harbor for miles and miles, you'd bump into these big things called oil rigs. Oh, very important job. The only thing is, the oil rigs know it. See, every now and then, they start to think that they're just a little more important than the other boats and ships.
I had a real hard time trying to cast the harbor master. I went through different casting agents. I'd say we auditioned over 150 actors. And I wanted the person to be, of a certain age. And I thought it was important that the storytelling be very much somebody that could meet the audience at their level, could talk to them as equals. And Denny was just nailed it. We'd gone through all these casting sessions and couldn't come up with anybody. So I left, the last time I left Toronto, and I said to the casting agent, okay, well, I'll think of these 3 or 4. She called me up. Do you know Denny Doherty? And well, I think he's from Halifax. Yes, he's from Halifax. Within seconds, I knew it was the right person. He just had, as you saw in all the episodes, he just had that wonderful rapport with the camera and the audience, and speaking to us as an equal, and with also that kind of slightly co-conspiratorial sense. I gotta let you in on the secret here. This is just that connection that he had when he was first coming to Halifax. He had just been finishing. They were doing reunion tours in Europe for the Mamas and the Papas.
The Mamas and the Papas.
So he flew straight from Germany to Halifax to do his first round of recordings. I was nervous as all get out. Here's Denny Doherty. I've grown up with the Mamas and the Papas, and so there was that. And plus, here's the guy that's going to be the star of our show and everything else. So I picked him up at the airport, and I'm driving him in. So we're driving along, and we drive in this schoolyard, which is our parking place. And he says, "What are we doing here?" I said, "I'd show you the set." "Oh, yeah, sure." I said, "Here?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is weird, man. This is where I went to school." And again, he was lost. He was rolling around school with all these memories coming back of going to school. That's where he done his grade school.
That's not it. Hey, both of them right here. Will you look at that? I was in a big hurry this morning, and I brought 2 different shoes. Now what am I going to do? How am I going to jog in these? One's red, and one's blue, and one's old, and one's new. What am I going to do? I bet I know what Guysborough and Digby would say.
Denny does a really good job. I really like how quiet his voice is. For little kids watching TV, it's not over the top at all.
With Denny, he would tell these stories, and he was talking about iconic 60s people. Like he knew Jimi Hendrix. He knew The Who, like the Beatles. He went to London. They hung out with the Beatles. That's what they did, And he would tell me these stories, and I think, that's a heck of a story.
Oh, it's much cooler out here. Oh, it's a lovely breeze off the water. It sounds like Theodore. Oh, hi, Theodore. Oh, you look so nice and cool down there in the harbor.
The costume designer that dressed Denny Doherty throughout the series was a very close friend of mine named Lynn Chapman. My involvement was she had another job when they were shooting a couple of episodes. And I had also been a costume designer for the creator, Andrew Cochran. So he asked me to step in for Lynn just for those episodes. The highlight of that week of shooting for me was that it happened to have been my birthday. My big assignment was to get a raincoat and a sou'wester, which is the traditional big yellow rain hat for Denny for those episodes.
Now, I do think that a big storm is exciting, but I'd much rather watch it from inside where it's safe and dry. Oh, good.
Well, I'd done some work with Andrew before on 2 or 3 projects, and so I was kind of like his music guy. And so when Theodore came up, he said, well, let's try a shot. So there was that association with Andrew, I think, that gave me the leg up on it. He showed me the show, and I just made up the tune. I played all the parts and sang all the parts myself. I was just working in the studio.
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Oda, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
I was a shoe-in for the editing job, and the software came down from Toronto. It was $100,000. It was about 120 or 130 shots every show. You know, they only had a budget for so many days of shooting, and the scripts were only so long, and there was generally so many seconds per shot, etc. So, you know, they would come in, the shots would come in like numbered 1 to 30. And so my software would I just throw them in a bin and sort them up. I think Andrew might have been the very first person to have Avid in the East Coast. It was just, you know, the earliest software I was lucky enough to work on. And in the end, you know, it was a great software. I mean, it still is. I still use it today.
They filmed everything and struck it all and then started marketing, like using the content from the episodes to create the marketing. So by the time I started, that part of it was over. So I didn't see any of the actual filming of it. When PBS picked it up in the States is when it got really big. Well, all of the work that I did was promoting the show we did supplementary materials for PBS to hand out to people who requested them.
I remember Andrew, among his many virtues, at the time that starting the process of creating what would become Theodore Tugboat. I can remember among the people he talked to, he came to see me. And, you know, I was the head of production of a television plant. You know, talked about the idea of Big Harbor and Theodore Tugboat and, you know, what did I think the possibilities and challenges would be in producing it. And, you know, what did I see as, what did I think of the creative prospect, you know? And he had decided fairly early on that CBC Children's was the place he wanted to be the home for this particular project.
You know, I remember when Theodore Tugboat first arrived here. He had a lot of new things to get used to. And he wasn't sure that he ever would. Theodore was a promising young tug from a small harbor up the coast when he first pootered into port. Bright-eyed and bushy-bumpered. Everything was new and exciting to the little tug. The big harbor seemed so, well, big.
At the end of each of the seasons, Andrew would take us out in the Halifax harbor on a party boat. We'd have our end of season party on the party boat.
It was quite remarkable that they built these stories. I was more concerned with making it work. Of getting the number of episodes recorded in the allotted period of time, because we had a lot of technical challenges. My biggest fear in the whole thing was that one of the lights would drop in the pool. Before the production started, we went to great lengths to buy these massive GFI breakers so that if a light fell in the pool, nobody would get hurt. So my concern was over the lighting, and the electrical rather.
I think we were all very proud of what we did and very proud that it was a success and, you know, a great learning tool for young people. It was a good show.
It's such an attention to detail. And, you know, from the point of view of the kids, this isn't just some raggedy hand puppet that we're waving at them. It's a whole world that's so meticulously built. And the buildings look so nice, and the bridge and the dispatcher. It's all so nicely thought out, and I think kids really respond to that.
I had the crew here very sort of tense because I did one shot 20 times. And it was a shot of Theodore coming around because his friend Hank had been very distraught about something that happened to him and gone off and hidden himself somewhere, and eventually Theodore finds him. And he comes around the rock. Now these are little tugboats, and they can't move, they can't bend, they can't turn their heads, they have to face just like that. And he came around the rock, and he had to peer around the rock to see if his friend was all right, and it's one of those like, Hank. Now he can't do that, but it had to be that. And she brought the little boat around, Linda brought the boat around, and he said, he just goes around and he says, Hank, and I said, no, it's got to be, and it's got to have that little look, and so he's sympathetic. And I tell you, we see it now, and everybody knows what we're talking about. It just works. He bends around that rock, he's looking around to make sure that Hank's okay, and it's wonderful.
Hank? Theodore? I'm not late for the race, am I? Hank asked. Oh, no.
I think when I started there, it was already like going places, but it just kept being sold in more countries, and like everyone was, I think it was 80 countries that it was running in, somewhere like that. I was on the accounting end. I have my names in one or two episodes because I think somebody was missing, so I was the production accountant there, but mostly I had a more overall role as CFO of the company and not so much in the production end. But I did get to go to the set and visit, see all of that, which was like totally amazing. I mean, when you watch them the video and then you actually see how they produce it, that was totally amazing to me.
It was so fascinating that in order to get to these light levels, and then there was technical issues because next door there was an army base, and some of their electronics were putting lines in the camera that it was like a distortion.
I think any creator always has some anxiety about whether people are going to like what they've done or not. I had such tremendous people around. I mean, every single one of them were so talented in their own way that it was it really just became a matter of creating the right circumstances for them to do their stuff. And when you get that right, and we're trying to get it right, then it becomes this bigger work that's bigger than anybody.
One of the episodes I did was I think I introduced Carla, the cool cabin cruiser, and she was kind of a wild child, rebel, and a little reckless, which kind of described me at the time. So yeah, I think she was definitely my favorite.
Ah, yes, Carla. Carla was a spunky little cabin cruiser. She didn't work, and she was always on holiday, going wherever she liked. Hi, I'm Carla, she said. Hi, Carla, said Emily. I'm Emily, and this is Foduck. Hello, Carla, said Foduck. 4 ducks, said Carla. Okay. Quack, 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 quack. I don't find that funny, said Foduck. But Emily laughed. I get it, she said. 4 ducks. My name's George, puffed the largest tug. Nice to meet you, Georgie Porgy, laughed Carla. Said George. And this is Hank. Hello, Honk, said Carla. Hi, laughed Hank. I'm Theodore, said Theodore. And everyone waited to see what Carla would say about his name. Hello, Theodore. Nice to meet you, said Carla. I hope you don't turn out to be a bore.
I was as a CBC producer for many years. I took 10 years off to have my 3 sons, and I just worked part-time. And so I took on that project as a part-time PA.
I just started pitching them and pitching them and pitching them. I think I pitched 12 ideas, and then they picked them up, and then I wrote 6, 10, something like that.
It needed somebody who could dedicate a lot of time to it because it was high volume. Bill would edit the shows, make all the editorial decisions, and then he would send us that information in Toronto, getting all the sound completed and getting it off to CBC. It was a really good relationship because we were so far away, and there was no Zoom or anything at the time.
So I was working at CBC Halifax, and I worked in the design department. I was sort of a stagehand. There was a call from my supervisor, my boss, and she said, look, one of the guys who was working on Theodore Tugboat is opting out. My first assignment was working with the designer of the electronic systems. His name was Arie Heckert, and he was this old Dutch guy who had language that would make a sailor blush. So I went out to his house, where I endured a couple days of being in a room with him smoking Camel non-filter cigarettes. My job was to be charging the batteries on the boat. So he showed me how to do that, and my job was to tend that, which was basically sitting on a stool, making sure the batteries were in the chargers. And about day 2 or 3 into my dream job of not doing much other than sitting around on my butt looking at something like that, Bob Cardona came in and he said, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Greg. What do you do? I said, well, I'm helping Arie charge the batteries. He said, not anymore. He said, you're going in the pool. We want you to run the boats. And I said, okay, why not? I'll do that. I didn't really like the idea of sitting around on the stool watching batteries charge, trust me.
This guy, Fred Allen, asked Dave Albiston, my guy, could he recommend anybody? Put me in line, and I got that gig. It was the last season of Theodore Tugboat. We built a couple of characters when we were there. One was a character called Pugwash. It was a little yellow submarine, and that was really interesting because we had to do all these underwater shots with this thing. We had to make it look like it was underwater. So that was really quite a neat thing to.
Harum scarum, shockum freakum. We're the rhyming rocks of Ecum Seecum. Boo, added the third rock. And that's when Pugwash knew she had dived straight into the terrible Ecum Seecum circle, where ships sometimes got lost forever.
So we used smoke, and we used lights shining in trays of water that created a dipply water effect. And you know that the backlighting of your smoke and that water effect works better, so it's more readable to the camera.
I just think that the vibe of acceptance and community, children's shows that have those qualities often do quite well. And it came from the heart, like that show absolutely came from Andrew's desire to create, a beautiful message and with fun characters and stories, and to pay homage to Nova Scotia and to our harbor. It was it's something that I think people were very proud of. It was kind of an iconic show on CBC.
Uh-oh. How did this happen?
It was completely a business decision, as far as I know, for CBC not to continue it. By the time these kids watch every episode, they're going to be, 2 years older. They outgrow it. And then the next kids, they just start over from the same shows.
Yeah, they told me it was the last go around for it.
The ending was planned. It really relates to television economics. A season is normally 65 episodes. 65, I think it's 5 times 13, so 13 weeks, 5 days a week. So when you get to, so you look at multiples of 65, and when you get 130 episodes, the series can run forever because the audience is renewing itself every year. Right? The audience is growing in and then growing out. Research suggests that younger audiences like to see shows more than once because they like to sort of anticipate what's coming next. We repackaged it for the US and for PBS and then other international territories.
When Andrew Cochran's company went into receivership, very unfortunately, because of Theodore, he tried to go up against behemoths like Sesame Street, and he just didn't have the money to continue.
Pugwash and Theodore floated very close to each other.
I knew you'd know how to find me, Theodore.
Pugwash said softly. "You're going to make a great ocean tug. And I know you'd be okay, Pugwash," smiled Theodore. "You're already a great undersea explorer."
Wasn't that a good idea Theodore had, to get everyone to turn off their lights? Wish I had a good idea about how to make my fish happy. I just know something's wrong, even if no one else thinks so. Wait a minute. Turn off their lights. That's it. It's night, and I'm here at the office very late. And usually, I turn the light in the tank off because it's time for my fish to go to sleep. There. Thanks for visiting us here in the Big Harbor. We'll see y'all again next time. Oh, they look much happier.
Sophie was on her way to take her pictures for the day when she came to a sudden stop, not far from a very large group of fish. She could tell they were laughing and chattering and having all kinds of fun. "I wish I could be part of a group like that," Sophie said to herself. "But I am the only bright yellow submersible in this part of the ocean. How could I be part of a group?" She plotted her course and went back to work with her camera. Soon, Sophie noticed a single flat-looking fish coming into view. Excuse me, would you like to be in a group with me?" she called. The flounder didn't reply, or even stop, so she called more quickly, Or maybe I could be in a group with you." But the flat fish continued to slowly swim off into the wild, watery distance without even a word. "I guess not everyone can be in a group," Sophie said softly.
Eventually, Halifax hosted the enormous tugboat, the real tugboat, which was here for a number of years.
We actually had a big full-size tug that looked like Theodore Tugboat in the harbor. In the last few years, it was moved to Ontario, so you can see it there.
And now, I think very recently, the tugboat was half sunk. It lives in Ontario.
I caught sort of wind of this kids show being produced, and I knew who Denny Doherty was. And I came here to go to art school. I had no connection with the show other than when I entered into the business, I started working at the CBC, all the tech crew that worked on Theodore Tugboat. So the stagehands, the carpenters, the painters, not the model builders as such, but the full-time CBC people. Years later, I got to work with some of more of the people on a couple of kids shows that I worked on in my career. Later on, I moved into museum world technician. Set pieces, the buildings, and the boats are all at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, right here on the waterfront. But while I worked there, we did a little gentle restoration of the boats and buildings that were on display. See them in storage, pull them out, look for loose little pieces, little touch-ups with paint, just bring them into better care.
You mean that pirate didn't get you? What pirate, Hank? Well, we thought, began Hank. That is, everyone was sure. I mean, we all heard a pirate was taking tugboats away. Hank, what are you talking about? I've been welcoming the new pilot boat.
The costume designer that dressed Denny Doherty throughout the series was a very close friend of mine who passed a couple of years ago, named Lynn Chapman.
Well, I think it's two things. I think one is the tone was right for kids. Just you felt sort of comfortable in it.
I hope it gave kids a nice, to think in terms of stories, because it was, nobody really gets told a story anymore. They get read a story. But Denny was telling the kids stories. And I think that was a really nice, unique bit about Theodore.
The lessons that he taught through the actions were very clear. It was not super simple, but it was very clear.
It wasn't scary. Even the dark moments weren't that dark. It was just dark enough to give it a little bit of a zest, but things always came out right.
I think there's a kind of East Coast charm about it without being like an East Coast maritime Canadian charm about it. It's got some simplicity and innocence, but it is also about the Halifax harbor, which is a working harbor and has some historical significance. And I loved all of that stuff.
I'd like to think that it gave people an appreciation for Halifax and for sort of what it's like here and how we do things and who we are and those things. And I guess again, not knowing but hoping. We set out in the series with some themes about friendship and belonging and fairness and some of those ideals. And I hope that those people that saw the series had a feeling that there was a friend in the time that they spent. I think if we achieved a sense of friendship and belonging, fairness, I think that'd be great.
Theodore looked around at the other tugs and tried to decide who his best friend really was. He thought about how it felt when everyone rescued Hank, working together, and the big cheer when Hank finally came free. And then Theodore knew the answer. "I think we're all best friends," he said. "That's right," said Emily. "We sure are," said Foduck. "You bet," added George. "Everyone's best friends," tooted Hank as if he just thought of it. They were all so happy they didn't notice that Pearl, the pilot boat, had arrived. "We've got to get to work right away," she said. "A wind is coming up, and we have to bring those big ships in fast." "Right," shouted the tugs, and they all headed off to work. All the best of friends in the friendliest harbor of them all.
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Foduck, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.